Again, another deck we haven't seen much of on coverage, but I think does belong in the discussion for the top tier of the Pioneer format.
Right, and Spirits is one of the decks that's actually on the other side of things that tends to line up pretty well against the Inverter deck, because something like Spell Queller is a little bit hard to answer. The fact that so many of its threats have flash and it can apply pressure while being disruptive in a way similar to Izzet and Soul, but leans less on synergies, is pretty good for it against a Thoughtseize deck.
Stonecoil Serpent on turn 1 is the play from Bob. Don't forget about that sneaky reach on Stonecoil Serpent. We've all done it. Protection from multicolor has the capacity to be relevant here as well for Stonecoil Serpent.
Right, and there's also a point where that means it's not going to be able to get eaten by any of the disruptive creatures that hit things that are already on the battlefield. These are your Deputy of Detentions, your Reflector Mages. Things in that vein just basically aren't going to be able to touch this. The best thing that Strodl's going to have available to answer it is Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, and look at this from Bob Huang. Suit up that Serpent. 6/6 Ensouled Stonecoil Serpent rumbling across the battlefield.
To lean a little bit into internet jokes, if a snake were to wear pants, how would it wear them?
You have broken me, Emma. as I contemplate snake fashion. That's what all the people are here for, too, the snake fashion.
Bright side, Strodl kind of stole them. Little petty, not going to lie. Little petty to steal it like that. But empty battlefield.
Yeah, had the perfect answer. Just as you mentioned, Brazen Borrower able to reset things over on Strodl's side. That's not a spirit. This is cheating.
Well, it's a flyer. Really, what is the difference?
Yeah, and it's interesting. The Lord in the deck, one of the Lords anyway, Empyrean Eagle, just cares about flyers, doesn't care about spirits.
So here's something worth noting. We talked about the importance of Shrapnel Blast going into the round. It feels like in Soul Artifact is just Shrapnel Blast with upside in a lot of ways.
Sure.
There we saw Strodl lose 5 and then have to spend a turn answering it. That's the dream, right?
Yeah, great point. Still a big swing there. Not the same level of card disadvantage. Looking over the interesting features of Bob Huang's deck. 2 Shadow Spear in the main deck. This has become pretty standard in these Izzet and Soul lists, but it is a big pickup from Theros Beyond Death. Talk about how this changes the matchup a little bit for these Izzet and Soul decks.
Sure. So one of the nice things that it does is it makes it much better at racing other creature matchups.
Sure.
Just because of the lifelink, especially when you pair it with a 5/5, which then is a 6/6 or larger. And the fact that it also gives trample gives it a bit of evasion on something like a Darksteel Citadel, which could normally just get chumped a bunch of times.
Yeah, I think this was a sneaky big pickup for the deck. And now we see the other equipment in the Izzet and Soul deck come on down. Ghostfire Blade.
Do we see it?
It is very ghostly and ethereal. Hard to really put my finger on, but I believe it's there. And if I believe it, it's true. Post-fact world, Emma. And the beats are coming from Bob. Cortland Strodl, just a Maelstrom Wanderer on his side of the battlefield. I'm not sure of the exact timing, if we're still in combat, and Cortland's maybe thinking about making that Maelstrom Wanderer a little bigger to attempt a block.
Modern Classic players, your round 3 pairings are posted online at pairings.starcitygames.com and are going to the pairings board now.
And so, long debate over what to do with this damage. It looks like ultimately, just going to take it. Falls to 9, does Cortland.
Yeah, and this is a spot where it feels like Huang is representing something, and you don't want to get blown out by a Wild Slash or something to that effect.
Sure. And we do see that card in hand for Bob. Fancy shocks. Just fancy shocks.
actually a card that the Izzet and Soul community has been back and forth on a little bit, because if you have a big Stone Coil Serpent, it can turn off the damage prevention that your protection gives.
Okay. Interesting. Here, Wild Slash just going to play clean.
Got countered.
It's a big swing in favor of Cortland there. A second Supreme Phantom. Okay.
This is actually a pretty good wall here.
Yeah.
Just having a pair of 2/4 flyers. Ooh, it's your favorite card off the top for Huang.
What did he pick up? I missed it.
The first blast of the match.
Well, you know the second one's coming. It's just a matter of time.
They come in twos. Shrapnel Blast is basically the red Thragtusk.
That is a bridge pretty far, but I'll allow it. And it looks like we have a skilled animator coming down now from Bob. Big Stone Coil Serpent looking to get in the red zone.
And it's really hard to just take this here, right? We see Strodl at 9. And this, how much is this, 10 coming across?
Looks like a full 10, yeah. So there's going to have to be a block made for sure. We know, of course, Cortland probably knows it too. Shrapnel Blast just rolled up at the ready.
Oh, everyone knows.
Again, you see Cortland really struggling to figure out how to line up blocks. That's the position this Izzet and Soul deck routinely puts you in. It's like going to go ahead and double block on the Serpent that can be killed.
See, and in a lot of ways, that turn felt very Delver-esque, where even though Huang technically lost combat, who cares? Strodl's at 2.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're throwing material away if your opponent's going to end up at 0.
Here's a Selfless Spirit. Cortland going to go ahead and try and get some damage in. Going to leave open mana. Has a Brazen Borrower, so were there not Shrapnel Blast, we'd have a plan, but there's always a Shrapnel Blast. We have established that.
It's definitely a rough spot, especially with this Mutavault and so many lethal attackers here.
Right. Beyond the lethal spell in hand.
You know, Strodl, you got to play to your outs if you're in his position.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe the Shrapnel Blast isn't there. You know it is, but maybe it's not.
Yeah, Bob just forcing some action from Cortland. He's going to go ahead and show the Shrapnel Blast, and that is going to get the scoop. And Bob up a game in the Pioneer matchup. Just such a good illustration of how that deck closes out your options as the defensive player. There was there were no winning blocks to be made. There was no winning line for Cortland to find. It was just squeezed on all sides.
Yeah, generally speaking, a creature deck that has more lords than the other one is going to come out ahead a lot of the time. And we saw a pile of Supreme Phantoms there, just was not close to good enough.
Yeah, the sizing did not matter. And Bob able to take down game 1. Why don't we head to our sideboard, see what the players are working with. We can start over on Cortland's side. There you see 3 Mystical Dispute, 2 Dovin's Veto, 2 Declaration and Stone. Good to see that card again. 2 Settle the Wreckage, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Gideon of the Trials, 1 Deputy of Detention, and finally a Detention Sphere. A lot of capability for Cortland to really posture as the control player in this matchup.
Yeah, and I would expect a pretty large pivot from Strodl's side here. Mystical Dispute is one of the cards that's actually going to shine here, even though Huang doesn't have a huge number of targets for it. Being able to tag things like Ensoul Artifact and Skilled Animator is so huge when sizing is one of the most important things in these matchups. It's also just an incredibly mana-efficient way to react to what Huang is doing. Declaration and Stone, pretty nice against things like Stone Coil Serpent. Set of the Wreckage is another way to sort of have a gotcha in your back pocket. And then Deputy of Detention and Detention Sphere just let you cover some bases. It's hard to say how hard Strodl's going to lean into this, but I would expect him to really look at his removal options here and probably lean out of some of the cards that demand you be on the offensive or try to stifle the ways the opponent is interacting, like Rattle Chains, for example.
Sure, I could also see maybe getting away from something like Curious Obsession just because of Bob's capability to respond to Cortland's threats and just playing a more fair game plan, being the control deck very squarely.
Right, and it's tough with the card Curious Obsession specifically just because drawing 2 cards a turn is so strong when you're in a controlling role and you have all of these X3s in your deck anyway. So that one I could see going either way on,
Sure.
but I also could see him leaning out of it just because fundamentally when you're trying to defend, a card that triggers when you connect with a player is a little rough.
We'll have to see how Cortland wants to set up his deck as we head into Game 2. Meanwhile, over on Bob's side, we are looking at 3 Mystical Dispute, 2 Bone Crusher Giant, 2 Brazen Borrower, 2 Hangerback Walker, 2 Wild Slash, a Stubborn Denial, a Disdainful Stroke, an Ether Sphere Harvester, and finally 1 Whirler Rogue. Emma, what do you want to do if you're sitting in Bob's seat?
Mystical Dispute, very nice. Tags most of the creatures in Strodl's deck, and even at 3 mana is not an awful rate against some of Strodl's more powerful cards. Being able to tag, say, a Settle the Wreckage is something that Strodl probably isn't going to be able to protect very efficiently in the first place, so having a mana leak for it, even if for 3 mana, is fine. Bone Crusher Giant going to be pretty reasonable against a creature-based deck, especially if you're looking to go longer and be able to hang in a grindy game. Whirler Rogue is particularly attractive whenever you need things that can get through flyers and your traditional evasiveness isn't actually going to be very good. It also is just 3 bodies in 1 card. Aether Sphere Harvester is one that I could possibly see coming in because it is so good at attacking into a flash strategy full of surprise flying blockers. Not positive, just it is a little bit rougher and does require you to have another body in order for it to work. And then finally, I really like something like Wild Slash if you think that Strodl is going to actually be leaving in anything that it kills.
Definitely a lot of potential for mind games on both players' side. Of course, we don't have open deck lists here on the SCG Tour, but in general, you know the options available to your opponent, and you want to contemplate what they might be doing on their side of the table.
Right, and this is going to depend a lot on how low to the ground Huang is going to want to stay. Generally speaking, something like Ginger Brute doesn't look very good on its face and can end up lining up pretty bad when you actually need to hang in turn 10 of a game. So if he's looking to pivot out of that half of his strategy, then we could see more of these bigger cards coming in, your Brazen Borrowers, for example. But if he thinks that he can't face a longer game against an opposing synergy deck that's better at going large, then something like Ginger Brute is going to be great because of how evasive it is.
Makes sense to me. Well, the Is It in Soul deck's role is to make its opponents uncomfortable through its aggression. You know what doesn't make players uncomfortable in the feature match area, though? Karnox Gaming Chairs. They have got your back 100% of the time. Of course, you can save 10% at checkout when you visit karnox.com/SCG. You and I sitting in our Karnox Gaming Chairs right now. I'm rocking back and forth subtly as I speak, and I'm enjoying it. I'm like an old man. Don't touch that handle, Emma. Do not do it.
What does this knob even do?
There's so many knobs. You can adjust the Karnox Gaming Chairs in any way you want. You will be comfortable. I guarantee it. Get a little lean going, a little rock going. I'm like an old man on a front porch right now, just in my element, rocking away.
I mean, you're quoting songs from the 2000s. Oh my God, how long ago was that?
It's pretty long ago.
Nope.
It's pretty
Back
long
to
ago,
the match. No, and this bit's over.
That's it? It's canceled? It is a while ago.
Oh, Lord.
Have a result from our modern match. Kyle Reichard up a game against Lee McLeod.
How old is Lean With It? Oh my gosh.
I'm going to guess 14 years old is my unfortunate guess.
How do you do this? That was really good. It's 2006.
I have a good sense for when music came out.
It was recorded in 2005, but we'll count it. Mm-hmm. We'll count it. After all, right now, all sight is 2020.
That's the buff we've all gotten for this period.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, hindsight's just on overdrive right now.
Another result coming in. You see over in Standard, Teamer Reclamation up a game against Gruul Aggro. We saw that matchup a little bit yesterday, Emma. We really talked about Storm's Wrath as a crucial pickup for Teamer Reclamation, now able to utilize a Wrath that does answer a lot of Gruul's threats.
Yeah, having that card and Aether Gust just puts such an incredible squeeze on the Gruul aggro decks for something like Shifting Ceratops. Used to be an incredible tool against the deck because it leaned so hard on its counter magic and the ability to kill big things with something like Expansion Explosion, which couldn't touch Ceratops. Now, I think it's shifted back to being in Teamer Reclamation's favor a bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Ceratops is a card that, as this format started, I was extremely high on in my sideboard, much like when M20 Standard started and when Throne of Eldraine Standard started. There were a lot of Ceratops around, and I think it's just trending downwards now as people find efficient answers and as decks get a little bit more diverse with what kind of walls they're able to present for Ceratops.
Right, and there's even a point where we saw this a lot at the Players' Championship with all the Simic Flash decks running around. A lot of times you would attack into your Simic pile of counterspells deck with your supposedly unbeatable Shifting Ceratops, and they would flash in a Night Pack Ambusher.
Yeah, you're fine with that trade.
Exactly. Or if you have a Nissa who shakes the world, 2 lands just blanks it.
Yeah.
It's such a rough spot to be in.
I think we all expected a bit bigger impact out of Shifting Ceratops. Not to say it's been absent from the format or even that it's been unimpressive. It's had spots to shine. I think we all just thought a little bit more would come out of that card.
And, I think that's a great spot for a hate card to be.
I
want
agree.
it to look powerful on its face and then be a little worse than that. Just that feels like a good level of efficacy versus, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Veil of Summeracy.
Well, here's the thing. I'm an Infect player by trade.
Right,
so
you love that one.
Yeah, I just can't agree with you there. I think we need more Veil of Summers.
More Veils. 8 Veils.
Look, I'm just saying, people don't have a problem with stuff like Pyroblast, so if other colors get 1 mana Vindicates, I don't think a reactive card in green is the problem. Normally, green had to settle for Great Sable Stag. That card wasn't playable during Fairies. Like, what is that card supposed to do?
Very little. I will not argue in favor of Great Sable Stag, but I do not believe you are making this argument pro Veil of Summer in good faith, Emma.
Why?
I think you are tainted by your biases.
Infected, if you will.
Infected by your biases,
I would
yes.
argue that I am complete.
Okay. 1 with the Phyrexians.
All will be.
Feels like it's time to see the Phyrexians again. It's been a little while.
I hope so. I saw this online theory where Shadow Spear is covered in Phyrexian oil.
Oh.
And I love that.
I am not a big lore person. I don't know as much of it as I probably should for someone who has been associated with the game as long as I have. But that makes sense to me, and I understand that theory, and I like it a lot.
I want to go back to new Phyrexia. I want some new interesting Infect cards.
Daniel really enjoying his camera time there as he stares up into our lighting. Probably due to the flexibility of that Carnox gaming chair.
It's good lighting, Brian.
Oh, it is. No dispute. Looks like Bob on a mulligan to 6 here, and I believe Cortland was able to keep the opening 7. Bob again, turn 1, Stonecoil Serpent.
And we see a Gideon of the Trials hiding out in Strodl's hand. That communicates that he's likely looking to tank up here against what Huang is doing, which is unsurprising, but also an incredible tool against a go tall strategy like it's in Soul.
Gideon of the Trials actually getting a bit of run in Pioneer now, also a response to those Dimir Inverter decks.
Struggle to answer it once it comes down on the table if you don't have something like Hero's Downfall or Brazen Borrower.
Right. Pioneer has been really fun as far as that goes. Old cards finding new homes, taking on exciting roles.
From the makers of Rabble, 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 we have Rattle, Rattle, Rattle.
Okay, I like that one. Unfortunately, short-lived is the Rattle Chains. Wild Slash going to answer that one. Cortland, though, untaps, access to 3 mana. Looks like debating between a couple plays here. You mentioned Gideon of Trials at the ready.
Looks like he's trying to figure out if he wants to respect a stubborn denial here, but Huang just has a bunch of metallic rebukes in hand from the looks of things.
Yeah, not the correct counter magic for this spot, but gets the pass back.
Ooh. And this is one of the benefits of not having open deck lists.
Mm-hmm. That was a huge, huge point of advantage headed Bob's way.
Uh-oh. The tap out.
Yeah, it looks like we have Metallic Rebuke on an attempted mystical dispute.
On a rattle chains, and then dispute tags the
Gotcha.
rebuke. And the shields are down for Huang.
Yeah, now it's time for Gideon 100%.
Which Gideon?
The Trials.
Of
the Trials.
Trials.
Huge dispute there from Cortland. Now Bob going to have to rebuild a little bit. Ghostfire Blade, step one. There you see Gideon of the Trials.
And now there's an interesting squeeze on Strodl, because if he pluses the Gideon on the wrong permanent, Scissors can go on the other one.
Yeah, he says don't worry about it. I'm not plussing on anything. It's time to get aggressive.
Oh, turn the corner. I love this from Strodl.
4-4 Gideon heads into the red zone.
6 damage? More than the 3 damage Huang is currently threatening right now.
Correct. What does this tell you about the texture of Cortland's hand if you're sitting in Bob's seat? What are you fearing if you see...
Piles of removal.
Yeah, that's my thought as well.
Tons of interaction.
Now Bob with an Ensoul in hand. Looks like Hope of Giripur here.
And Strodl's missing land drops. That also says his hand's just gas.
Spells, yeah. 1/1 Legendary Flyer going to come on down. Stone Coil Serpent going to suit up. Importantly, Bob able to leave open Metallic Rebuke on this turn.
If a snake held a sword, how would
in its mouth, 100%.
In
I know
its
the answer to
mouth?
that one, yes.
Not in its coils?
No.
Oh my gosh. How about this exchange?
Yeah, Supreme Phantom attempt from Cortland. Bob tried to answer with Mystic Dispute, but dispute back for Cortland, and you understand why that has become such an important sideboard card in the Pioneer format.
It feels like Dispel, but it can also tag threats. It's incredible.
Incredible Magic card, for sure. Pickup on this one was a little slow. Everyone believed in it, but there was some debate on whether it would reach back to the older formats, things like Pioneer, Modern, Legacy. The answer, resounding yes.
Oh yeah, you only had to counter 1 Teferi Time Raveler with it to be on board.
Absolutely.
That's literally all it took. Oh, I can counter Jace the Mind Sculptor for 1 mana?
Deal.
You
Sign
know
me
what?
up.
Yeah. Okay.
Now some more aggression from Cortland with that Lord on the battlefield. Damage amped a little bit. Looks like 8 headed Bob's way. Good instinct for aggression from Cortland.
That's one of the most important things of playing these blue-white decks, is
Absolutely.
understanding when you actually just need to turn the corner.
Bob is going to successfully pick off that Gideon at the Trials.
Strodl doesn't care.
Yeah, second Supreme Phantom coming down for Strodl. Looks like Bob wants to fire off Rebuke here. It succeeds.
I love being able to tap Ghostfire Blade for it.
Yeah, nice little interaction there. Here's a Wild Slash on that Rattle Chains. Okay.
1 life is a lot to pay for that, but it's saving him 2 or 3 life, so...
Bob doing a pretty good job holding down the fort. Of course, that Stone Coil Serpent. As I mentioned, sneaky reach, able to play some defense here.
This feels like it's close to getting away from Strodl.
Yeah, I'm
actually.
concerned. I agree. Just a couple good draws from Bob. And he'll pull ahead quickly. Has the Ensole at the ready. Maybe picked up a Dispute there, I think?
That would be colossal.
Yeah, given Cortland's mana squeeze, that would be a big get. And I do think that was the draw on this turn. How aggressive does Bob want to get here? Those 2 Shivan Reefs on Bob's side. It might add up over time.
Really putting him through the ringer here.
Yeah, 2
At
blue
some
spells you want to
point,
cast.
The Supreme Phantom becomes lethal.
I think Bob desperately wants to avoid that situation. Do have a result from our modern matchup. Mono Red Prowess takes down Chargetron. I love seeing Lee McLeod play that Chargetron deck. I don't think you want to see Mono Red Prowess across the table from you in most instances.
Right. If you don't have something like an early Chalice of the Void, you're going to struggle pretty hard against that matchup.
Absolutely. Bob says it's time to Ensole this artifact. Spell Queller comes down. But as we expected, Mystical Dispute is the response from Bob. And now that Hope of Girpur wears the scissors. Bob looking to turn the corner here. We see Brazen Borrower at the ready.
No, is that 2 Brazen Borrowers from Strodl?
I believe it is. And this is a huge, huge reset available.
That's so much here.
Now, what do you do if you're Cortland here? Because you want to squeeze through those last points of damage. Don't want to tip your hand too early. Or do you want to force one, really constrain Bob's access to colored mana? There's a lot of options available.
Right, and there's certainly a point where you can even just bounce Hope of Girpur, or just bounce the Stone Coil Serpent, attack for 1, and then Huang might not be able to even attack back the following turn.
Right.
If you just have the other Brazen Borrower to bounce another blocker out of the way. There's a point where stopping the 5/5 from attacking is basically the same thing as dealing with it. If you just get to sit on your hands and wait to develop your own battlefield that's wider than your opponent at literal 1 life.
Sure. This is a really interesting spot for Cortland.
Two-headed giant players, your next round pairings have made their way to the pairings boards. Once again, two-headed giant players, your next round pairings.
I think you can make good arguments for playing this multiple ways. I am very curious what line Cortland ultimately will take here.
There's even a point where you could attack with Supreme Phantom and after blocks bounce the Ghost Fire Blade.
Yeah. That seems reasonable to me.
So many ways to play that turn, but he's going for the throat.
And Bob going to fall to just 1 after that attack. I actually really like your play, Emma. I think that's very interesting. But look how this has worked out. Hope of Girpur going to go ahead and rumble through. And Cortland going to go ahead, show that second Brazen Borrower, and that is going to get the scoop. Really interesting last turn of the game there.
Yeah, and that's an interesting spot where it's tough to decide if you're actually supposed to attack with the Hope or not, but you have to imagine things aren't getting better for you.
Sure.
Right? Strodl's going to at least get to cast a Brazen Borrower as a Brazen Borrower the following turn because it's on an adventure. You know it's there. It's open information. So you actually just have to work towards closing the game while you still have the ability to apply any sort of pressure there.
Right. It's one of those windows where abstractly you say, okay, attacking there cost him the game, but the only way he was ever going to win the game was by making that attack.
Exactly. There, Strodl theoretically falls to 8, and there's 9 power on Huang's side of the battlefield, and you can maybe start forcing some blocks.
Right.
Ghost Fireblade would make it 11 power. It's incredibly complicated.
A very interesting turn of Magic. Would love to break that one down further. Well, if you're watching today, intrigued by these decks and these deck lists, you want to give them a shot, why not head out to an IQ. You know I love those invitational qualifiers. Of course, there's those prizes, $1,000 to the top 8. It's big bucks. Invitational qualifications, you want to come and play that event in just a few months. Of course, those critical SCG points for climbing the ladder, and that beautiful playmat as well. You want more information about IQs, you can head over to go.starcitygames.com/IQ.
That horse looks angry, and I've never noticed it before.
Frightened, possibly? It's kind of got wild eyes.
Okay, so is that a horse skull on the horse?
It did appear that way, and I hope that's not the case. I don't think you should have your animals wear the bones of their compatriots. Just my policy.
I mean, yeah, that's a little messed up. But I mean, honestly, is that different than like a tree house?
No, it's probably not. But I think the horse has a greater capability for psychological impact than the tree house does.
Maybe. We don't actually know trees that well.
This is true.
So maybe they just have some sense that we can't actually appeal to.
Yeah. See, I have to not buy into that theory because I have to eat something. And I've already given up the meat side of things. So if you tell me that my vegetables feel bad as well, I just wither away and die. And there's got to be compromises somewhere.
Yeah, my whole bit is just that tree houses are trees holding up their dead friends. And like,
Kind of cruel.
Yeah, I'm really far down this rabbit hole at this point and don't
Right.
really know where to go from here.
I guess not into a treehouse would be my answer.
Well, I mean,
Unless you're into that.
yeah, like the thing is the tree house is already there. Me going in the tree house isn't fixing the situation.
Sure.
Or making it worse, I think.
I think it'd be cool to live in a high-end treehouse, like up in the canopy in the jungle.
That's some real HGTV thing
Right.
where it's just somehow someone is going, I like to, collect Beanie Babies professionally on the side, and someone else is like, and I run a YouTube cooking show,
Right.
and we have a budget of $1.4 million to build a treehouse, and none of it adds up.
Yeah, but somehow it gets built. The magic of HGTV.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They talk about some sort of molding that you've never even heard of, but they just go, yeah, and everyone knows that this is just in right now. And you go, yeah, people
I knew that.
do know this is in. I'm one of those people now.
What's your favorite HGTV show?
I really liked Monster House when I was a kid.
Okay.
I thought that was really cool how they would make floors that looked like lava and stuff, and how all these secret cupboards and things.
Yep.
And I don't know. We bonded over our love of The Cure yesterday, so
Yes.
you can imagine how I dressed in high school.
A little bit of a goth phase.
A little bit.
A hard goth commitment, I should say.
I came in to Richmond Friday in a custom bleached shirt where all the designs are bleached onto a black shirt.
Okay, very goth. I love it.
I have to tone down my eyeliner for the broadcast.
I said go full bore into the eyeliner. I'll do it too. We'll just do our next show in goth.
Oof. Will you spike your hair or something? We
What-
can throw a little bit of punk into it.
100%. I'm in.
I'll try to get some stuff put onto my my suit coat, maybe a couple patches.
Okay. Yeah, I think that works.
Studs.
A studded suit coat. Wow. You're onto something there. Players have mercifully drawn 7. Looks like they've kept as well. Fast as you can be, you'll never catch Ginger Brute.
I mean, run as fast as you can.
2 damage. Headed Cortland's way. Thus far. I bet Ginger Brute gets up to even more than that over the course of this game. When you saw Ginger Brute, did you scream future constructed all-star across multiple formats?
Did you not?
So it took.
Just run outside and start shouting at anyone who would listen about the Ginger Brute?
Here's the problem, is that, and I did this multiple times across the Throne of Eldraine spoiler, was when the cards first showed up, I was like, okay, I want to know a little bit more about the food synergies and exactly where you're going to get paid on that. Ultimately, none of it mattered. All these cards were so powerful in and of themselves that they were just good enough. So I think my evaluations were often thrown a little bit askew, but I did see potential for Ginger Brute right away. I was thinking more like Cavalcade of Calamity type stuff, but certainly it has reached back very far.
I was really high on Cavalcade of Calamity at the beginning of it. I
Same.
literally wrote my first article on Eldraine previews on Torbran and all the best ways to abuse him, and that was real high on my list.
Yeah, Torbrand, very high on my top 10 list when we did that for the set. Another exciting throne card, of which there were many, turns out. Also exciting, having 3 1-drops to play across the first 2 turns. Not a bad start on Bob's side. Nothing yet for Cortland.
And these are the kinds of draws that you always kind of walk up to your friends at the pairings board and go, yeah, the aggro deck of the triple 1-drop draw. This is what that is.
Yeah. Scary spot for Cortland. There are some catch-up mechanisms in the deck for sure.
How do you feel about Selfless Spirit?
It's not the best one. But maybe going to play a little defense here. We'll see if we can find a good block with Selfless Spirit. Shadow Spear at the ready. Of course, the scourge of limited games, definitely among the top 5 cards in the set, I would say, for limited, but there's so many good limited cards. I may even be missing a couple there. Looks like Selfless Spirit is going to make a block.
It's one of the best pack one pick ones. I don't know if it's one of the best overall cards, but it's very high on the list.
Okay. Of course, things like Dream Trawler, Kiora, Best the Sea God, Ashiok. These are some limited houses right there.
Oh, yeah. Especially when you start looking at things with a mythic rare symbol, it gets real rough out there.
Right. So a little blue mana pinched is Cortland. I point that out because I see multiple Brazen Borrowers in hand. Just going to play another Selfless Spirit here. Possibly looking to trade with another Stone Coil Serpent. We'll see if the opportunity presents itself for Cortland. Bob also with some mana issues. Only 2 lands on his side of the battlefield.
These are exactly the kinds of games where Huang is the most proficient. Low mana sequencing rich is it games.
Great point. Certainly right in Bob's wheelhouse. Selfless Spirit is going to find another block. Trades off with that Ginger Brute. No play
Is that
from
just
Cortland.
a pass? Not
Yeah.
even a land?
Yeah, no second blue source from Cortland.
This is brutal.
What is the response here? Brazen Borrower.
I think you have to fight over this. It's 2 turns of development if you just let this happen.
Bob agrees. Going to fire off Mystic Dispute.
And it feels bad because Huang doesn't have much else going on, but you can't just let that much get undone on your side of the battlefield when development's already an issue for you.
Second Brazen Borrower available. We're going to go with Nebelgast Herald. Again, another card we saw in All Screamed Future Constructed All-Star.
So many of the spirits look mopey on their face, but they all do very subtle things, which is kind of the hallmark of a powerful tempo card.
Sure.
I imagine no one looked at Days when it got previewed or when Nemesis first came out and was like, you know what? This is one of the best 5 counterspells ever printed.
World was very different back then. We tended to get every single card wrong when we looked at it. Here's Declaration in Stone from Cortland. That's going to go ahead and answer the only threat on Bob's side.
Does Strodl not have the Mystical Dispute?
Skilled Animator is the attempt from Bob. Think we are resolving this and figuring out what to target. So it appears no mystical dispute.
Giving a clue here is actually a pretty big drawback against the power up my artifacts deck.
Right, yeah. Declaration in Stone, a good catch-all, but you're seeing a point of weakness for sure.
And with Strodl at 8, this is huge.
Looks like Shadow Sphere got the buff. Draw is Spell Queller.
And you know what? Strodl's in range. Do you know what that means?
Oh, of course Bob has it. Come on, you knew he had it the whole time. And yeah, I think Cortland's just going to be forced to act to answer Bob's threats. That's going to put the shields down, and this one's all but over. Just waiting for the Shrapnel Blast, as we often are. And Cortland untaps. There is another attempt at this Herald. Bob says, I got the blast, and that is going to get the handshake. And the team of McLeod, Huang, and Goetschel moves on to 9-2 in prime position to put together a run at that top 8. Of course, Lee McLeod, no stranger to team top 8s. All these players around the SCG Tour, all with good finishes.